The movie is set in 1961, where we see a young Bob Dylan sitting in the backseat of the taxi. Writing something in his diary, he arrives in New York City and looks around. Bob then goes to a nearby bakery and sees some musicians' posters outside the bakery, like Pete Seeger, Lead Belly, and Woody Guthrie. Actually, he moves to New York to find and meet his idol. Woody Guthrie. Bob then goes inside to have a meal. While there, he picks out a piece of paper where we find out that his idol, Woody Guthrie, is hospitalized at Greystone due to a health issue. He asks a man sitting next to him about the place Greystone, and the man directs him to that place. Meanwhile, Woody's best friend, Pete Seeger, is on trial for a song that Woody has written because some politicians filed the case against him. The judge asks him to say something before pronouncing the sentence. Pete tells him that he has always been honest to his country, and the song he wrote is a patriotic song. The judge then dismisses the case, and Pete moves outside, where several journalists ask him questions. There, Pete performs the song titled "This Land Is Your Land" outside the courthouse next to his wife, Toshi. This land is your land, this land is my land. Pete then goes to see Woody at the hospital and comforts Woody by singing a song. Bob watches them from the door. Woody notices him and invites him inside. Bob tells them that he has written a song for Woody and asks to perform it for them. However, Woody cannot talk and starts hitting the dresser next to him to show approval. He sings the song for Woody, impressing both Pete and Woody. Pete then takes Bob home to the family, where he starts playing more of his music. During Bob's time with Pete, he joins the New York folk music scene. Bob works on his music and is taken to an open mic night to perform. There, he witnesses Joan Baez performing. After this, it's Pete's turn, but instead he introduces Bob and invites him to sing his song. When Bob gets up to play, he makes flirtatious comments to Joan Baez before performing his song "I Was Young When I Left Home."
I was young when I left home.
This earns Bob the attention of music manager Albert Grossman, who immediately decides to take him on as a client. Bob starts to record a cover of "Fixin' to Die," and while Grossman wants him to record his original music, the higher-ups want him to do covers for now. Bob goes to a music performance at a riverside church, where he meets Sylvie Russo and begins to date her. They spend the day watching a movie at the theater and discuss the themes at a restaurant afterwards. Sylvie takes note of Bob's contrarian mindset and recommends an author to him that shares similar views. They later attend a civil rights protest together. Sylvie and Bob start living together, and Bob sometimes visits Woody at the hospital to comfort him. One day, while partying at the house, Sylvie's sister Jane finds a notebook of Bob, and when she comments Sylvie about his real name, she replies she does not know, which makes her sad. The next day, Sylvie is ready to take an extended trip to Rome after an argument with Bob over the way he treats her when she talks about herself, and how he barely talks about his own past. Before leaving, she gives kiss and leaves for Rome. He later goes to a show to perform Masters of War, which Joan watches.
Young people's blood.
Captivated by his performance, she approaches him and they kiss. They later leave and sleep together. In the morning, Bob makes a comment about Joan's music being like oil paintings in a dentist's office. He then starts to play "Blowin' in the Wind," which Joan joins him in singing. Sylvie returns from her trip, just as Bob's career really starts to take off. He performs "Girl from the North Country" during a show with Joan. Sylvie begins to notice how close she and Bob are. More people begin to recognize Bob on the street and buy his album. And he even receives a letter from Johnny Cash saying that his Freewheelin' album is a prized possession. The two become pen pals and even perform at the same show. Bob performs "The Times They Are A-Changin'," which impresses people watching, such as Pete, Toshi, Joan, and Cash, while Sylvie is moved to tears. By 1965, Bob has become very famous, but he feels restricted or limited. People expect him to only play one style of music, folk music, which makes him feel stuck or unable to explore other styles freely. He meets fellow musician Bobby Newworth and goes with him to one of his performances. Things get sour when an overzealous fan grabs Bob's glass off his face, and he gets punched by her boyfriend when he tries to get them back. He goes to Sylvie's apartment so she can tend to him, but he sees that she is already with another man. She reminds Bob that they already broke up, but Bob only asks for towel to his wound. He then leaves the apartment. Bob starts responding to the political and social changes happening around him by changing his music style to electric folk rock. This new direction surprises and upsets the planning committee of a music festival, as they were used to his usual folk style. Bob records new songs like "Subterranean Homesick Blues" and "Highway 61 Revisited." After this, we see Pete on his TV show Rainbow Quest, where Jesse Moffett is a guest on the show. Bob then shows up on the show, and Pete introduces him to Jesse. Jesse lets Bob borrow his guitar to play the song "It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Lot to Cry." Later that night, Bob goes to Joan's apartment to reconnect, but she hardly allows him inside. He then starts singing a song while Joan is sleeping. She wakes up and asks him why he came here. He replies that he just wanted to see her. She then asks him to go, and Bob politely leaves. The next day, they go on their same tour, but things take a turn when Bob tries to play his own music apart from the set list, while Joan tries to start playing "Blowin' in the Wind." Bob makes a scene and tries to get Joan to play something else, but she plays the song herself while he walks off stage. Bob gets a band together, and they begin to record like a Rolling Stone.
Once upon a time, you're just so fine.
After recording, he goes to pick up Sylvie on his motorcycle as he is heading to the Newport Folk Festival. He calls Sylvie, and she looks outside to see him. She then gets ready, and they both head to Newport. There, Sylvie watches as Bob and Joan perform "It Ain't Me, Babe." Seeing the chemistry between them, Sylvie starts crying and leaves. After the performance, Bob asks Neuwirth about Sylvie's whereabouts. He tells him that she had already left Newport. He then gets on his bike to talk to her. Upon arriving, he sees Sylvie is ready to leave the city on a boat. He approaches her and tries to convince her, but she makes it clear that they are done and walks away. Heartbroken, he goes to his hotel room and falls asleep. The next morning, Pete visits Bob in his hotel room before his closing act performance. The festival committee is so concerned about Bob playing electric music that they send Pete to convince him to change his mind, even warning that it could affect Pete's own career. However, Bob ignores Pete's words and leaves. On his way out of the hotel, Bob runs into drunken Cash, who encourages him to go ahead and play his music even if it upsets others. That night, Bob and his band take the stage, beginning with their performance of "Maggie's Farm." The crowd reaction is immediately hateful, with many booing Bob and demanding he play his old stuff, while a smaller group is appreciative of the new sound. The head of the committee tries to shut down the music, but is physically fought away from the equipment. Bob starts to play "It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Lot to Cry," and people start throwing stuff at the stage. Pete eventually tries to get the music shut down, but both Grossman and Toshi stand in his way. After finishing with "Like a Rolling Stone," Pete pleads with Bob to finish the show with a folk song. Bob initially refuses until Cash gives him a guitar to go ahead and play "It's All Over Now, Baby Blue." The crowd is pleased. After the performance, Bob leaves the stage and goes to his apartment. The next day, Joan comes to see Bob, just before he is ready to leave town. She comments that he won and gained the freedom to play his music, though Bob asks what was really won. He then goes to visit Woody at the hospital one last time, before leaving town on his motorcycle. Bob then leaves town as Woody watches him from the hospital. The ending text states that 1 month after the Newport Festival, Bob Dylan released Highway 61 Revisited, which was said to be one of the most influential albums of all time. Dylan and Pete Seeger reunited in 1968 to play a tribute concert to Woody Guthrie. Seeger played folk music and was a major civil rights activist until his death in 2014. Joan Baez released over 30 albums and wrote the song "Diamonds and Rust" in 1975, about her relationship with Dylan. Since 1965, Dylan has released over 55 albums and continues to tour worldwide. He is the only musician to be awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature, though he did not attend the ceremony. In this way, movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more interesting movie recaps.